Word for it. We have another Prime Minister with us tonight, a former Prime Minister of Australia, two-time Prime Minister of Australia, and the chair of Life is Wonderful, a man who, as Prime Minister of Australia, had the courage and decency to apologise on behalf of the Australian people for the injustices done to the Aborigine race. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Honourable Kevin Rudd.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the organising committee, welcome to this extraordinary celebration of great lives of courage, the hope and the inspiration they give to us all, and a reflection on the great courage of their lives. The guy who's just up here, he does voices, is that right? This Rory guy. Bet you he can't do an Australian accent. There's a challenge for you. I was sitting next to a chap by the name of John Boyega. Apparently he's recently done a film on astronomy. Is that right? Star Trek, was it? Anyway, I said I was getting up from our latest movie sensation from Star Wars. I said, listen mate, have you got a joke? And he said, no, I don't. He said, but let me assure you, as soon as you stand up there with an Australian accent, that'll be the biggest joke of the evening. So thank you very much for it. I'll get you later. Folks, friends, one and all, there are just certain times in history of our human family when we actually break through. We actually break through. And we somehow broaden the tent of human freedom. And we somehow widen the arc of justice for all. And we were able, at least for a season, to celebrate the better angels of our nature and to remind ourselves afresh that progressive change is possible. The end of apartheid rule in South Africa is one such time, which resonates in us still today. After half a century of systematic brutality, change was brought about by those with the courage to make it happen. Such tumultuous change doesn't occur by accident. It's not simply the consequence of anonymous forces of history somehow rolling around the world in an unguided fashion. Such change happens because women and men decide to make it happen. They decide to make it happen. They then, through sheer physical human courage, resolve to make it happen and to translate the noble ideal of freedom into the real politics of their time and to suffer the consequences. And it is for this reason tonight that we gather here in London to honour publicly these leaders, their courage and the change they wrought through the actions they took in the field of political battle. So Dennis and Kathy and Cello, on behalf of Andrew, we are here tonight for a singular purpose, and that is to honour you. Not only through your struggle did you set your people free, you emboldened us afresh to pursue freedom and justice elsewhere in our troubled world. You were Nelson Mandela's comrades in arms, and together you lit a torch for us all. And you reminded us of the timeless principles of servant leadership. And that leadership requires not only vision, it requires courage. Certainly in our small part of the world, in Australia, you inspired a generation of us. And in our part of the world, my first act as a newly elected Prime Minister in Parliament was to deliver an official apology, public apology, to our Indigenous brothers and sisters who we had systematically abused for centuries. There was no pride in what white Australia had done to black Australia, only shame. My responsibility was to begin to set that to rights. In the scheme of what you, however, have accomplished in liberating the people, the entire people of South Africa, this was a very small thing indeed. But in confronting the formidable forces of racism in Australia, it was a large thing for us. A formal apology is one thing, closing the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians is another. For unless we do the practical stuff and make it work, words ultimately mean nothing. They are but clanging gongs and sounding cymbals. So let's remind ourselves afresh in the presence of these great leaders tonight that there is no place for race in the 21st century. That there is no place for racism in the 21st century, that there is no place for racial prejudice in the 21st century, that we are all indeed equal in God's eyes and in the eyes of our common humanity. That's why tonight we're also supporting the critical work of Global Citizen, a great global charity, a growing global movement dedicated to the central proposition of eliminating extreme poverty in the world. Global Citizen is a great and growing movement and once again demonstrates to us all that change on a large scale is possible, that progressive change is indeed possible, that freedom from want and freedom from fear is also possible if we have the vision, we have the guts, and we have the courage. There is a question I think we should all ask ourselves on a night like this. Each and every one of us. As we think of ourselves and our place in the world at large, do we see ourselves first as Brits, first as South Africans? Do we see ourselves first and foremost as Australians, as New Zealanders, as Europeans, as Americans, as Indians, as Chinese? Do we see ourselves first as peoples of a nation? Or do we see ourselves in the 21st century as first and foremost global citizens? I hope today our answer is that we are first and foremost global citizens. And the reason is simple. It is only when we begin to think as such that we will act as such and turn the dreams of peace, of freedom, of justice, and the elimination of poverty into a new and radically transforming reality. Dennis, Kathy, Andrew, the great legal team, Joel and George, we thank you. We thank you for your courage. We thank you for your extraordinary leadership. I don't think you know how many people you have lit up around the world. People you will never have met, but people who have met you. And for giving us, in this tired and weary world of ours, fresh hope for a future for us all. Thank you for coming.